Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most infamous unsolved cases in American true crime history, the story of Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia. This isn't just about a shocking crime from 1947. It's about a young woman with big dreams who came to Hollywood chasing stardom, only for her life to end in tragedy. We'll walk through her background, what happened that cold January morning, the massive investigation that followed, the wild theories, and where things stand today. I'll keep things respectful because, at its heart, this is a story about a real person whose memory deserves care. Let's set the scene. It's January 15th, 1947, in Los Angeles. The city is still shaking off the shadows of World War II. Soldiers are coming home, the movie studios are pumping out glamour, and there's this mix of hope and hustle in the air. But in the quiet Leimert Park neighborhood, on a vacant lot near South Norton Avenue and West 39th Street, something unimaginable unfolded. Around 10 a.m., a young mother named Betty Berzinger was out for a walk with her 3-year-old daughter. The morning was chilly and overcast, the kind of gray that makes everything feel a little heavier. As they passed the empty lot, nothing but weeds, some scattered trash, and cracked pavement, Betty spotted something pale near the curb. At first glance, she thought it might be a discarded mannequin from a store window, maybe left there as a prank. But as she got closer, her heart sank. It wasn't a dummy. It was the body of a young woman. Betty didn't linger. She quickly turned around, grabbed her little girl, and hurried to the nearest house to call the police. Officers arrived soon after, and what they found would shake the entire city. The victim was a white woman in her early 20s. Her dark hair fanned out around her head. Her body had been carefully positioned, and it was clear this wasn't a random act. The scene was eerily clean, no blood on the ground despite the obvious trauma. The dew from the night before had left the grass damp, but there were no clear footprints or tire marks to follow. It was as if whoever did this had taken great care to leave almost no trace. The police photographed everything, measured the area, and began their work. They had no idea yet who she was, but they knew this was no ordinary case. Los Angeles had dealt with plenty of crimes before, but this one felt different, deliberate, almost staged in a way that suggested someone with a very specific intent. Within hours, thanks to fingerprints, the victim was identified. Her name was Elizabeth Short. Friends and family called her Beth. She was just 22 years old, born on July 29th, 1924, in Hyde Park, Massachusetts, a working-class neighborhood in Boston. She was the third of 5 daughters in a family that faced its share of hardships. Beth's early life wasn't easy. Her father, Cleo Short, worked building miniature golf courses, a quirky business that did okay until the Great Depression hit hard in the 1930s. Money got tight, and one day when Beth was about 6, her dad simply drove away and didn't come back. The family heard his car was found parked near a bridge over the Charles River. Many assumed the worst, that he'd taken his own life by jumping in. His body was never recovered, and for years, Beth grew up believing her father was gone forever. That kind of sudden loss leaves a mark. She became quieter, more withdrawn, always seeming to look for something brighter ahead. Her mother, Phoebe, did her best raising the girls alone. Beth struggled with asthma as a child, so the family eventually moved to Florida, hoping the warmer climate would help. It was there, as a teenager, that Beth's beauty really started to turn heads. She had fair skin, striking dark eyes, and long, dark brown hair. She loved wearing black clothing and dark lipstick. It gave her this dramatic, almost old movie star look. But she wasn't interested in small-town life. She dropped out of high school around 16 and dreamed bigger. She wanted to be an actress, to see her name in lights, to escape the ordinary. In 1943, at 19, Beth made a bold move. She headed to California to reconnect with her father, who, surprise, turned out to be very much alive. He just started a new life in Vallejo, leaving his old one behind. Beth moved in with him for a bit, but it didn't go well. He was strict and set in his ways. She was independent and full of that restless energy young people often have. They clashed, and before long, she left to make her own way in Los Angeles. Los Angeles in the mid-1940s was a whirlwind. The war had just ended, and the city was flooded with young men in uniform, soldiers and airmen looking for connection before shipping out or readjusting to civilian life. Beth worked as a waitress in modest diners, scraping by on tips. Money was always tight. Some days she had enough for a meal and a room. Other days, she relied on the kindness of friends or acquaintances. She dated quite a bit, mostly older guys, often military men. She'd hang out at movie theaters, dance halls, and hotel bars, telling people she was an aspiring actress waiting for her big break. She'd pose for photos and talk about screen tests that never quite materialized. Beth had that magnetic quality. People remembered her. She was charming, a bit mysterious, and always dressed to stand out in her signature dark outfits. That's partly why the press later nicknamed her the Black Dahlia, playing off the 1946 film The Blue Dahlia and her striking appearance. Life wasn't all glamour, though. In late 1946, Beth traveled to San Diego, hoping to reunite with a pilot named Matt Gordon, whom she'd been corresponding with. He proposed marriage through letters, and she said yes. But when she arrived, she found him in the hospital after a plane crash. He passed away on Christmas Eve while she was there. It devastated her. Friends said she talked about never wanting to fall in love again. She returned to Los Angeles feeling even more alone and broke. The last confirmed sighting of Beth alive was on January 9th, 1947, at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Witnesses remembered her at the bar, chatting with a man. No one got a clear enough description to identify him later, and after that evening, she seemed to vanish. 6 days passed before her body was discovered. The newspapers exploded with the story, and the Black Dahlia name took on a life of its own. Now let's talk about the investigation, because this is where the case becomes a window in a 1940s Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, threw everything they had at it. Hundreds of detectives were assigned. The lead was Captain Harry Hansen, a seasoned cop with decades of experience, backed by Sergeant John Jemison and others. They set up a special command post and started chasing leads immediately. The body Bresiner found was Elizabeth Short, known posthumously as the Black Dahlia. Her body was split in half at the waist, and pieces of her flesh had been cut away from her body. And while she was severely mutilated, there was no blood anywhere, suggesting that the body had been thoroughly cleaned before being positioned at that spot on Norton Avenue. The autopsy was performed the next day by Dr. Frederick Newbar. It confirmed she had suffered severe trauma, including a blow to the head that was likely the cause of death, cerebral hemorrhage, and shock. There were signs she'd been restrained, and the body showed evidence of careful post-mortem handling. It had been washed thoroughly, and the bisection at the waist was remarkably precise, suggesting someone with anatomical knowledge, perhaps medical training. No drugs or alcohol were found in her system. The scene itself had almost no blood, indicating the killer had taken time to prepare and clean afterward. The press didn't hold back. The Los Angeles Examiner and other papers printed details and even photos, which fueled public hysteria. Women in the city became more cautious about going out alone. Tips poured in by the hundreds, some helpful, many not. Over the following years, more than 500 people confessed to the crime. Most were attention seekers, troubled individuals, or people under the influence. Police wasted countless hours chasing false leads, like a man who called claiming it was because she was mean to him, or letters with eerie details that turned out to be fabricated. Among the more serious suspects were a handful of intriguing figures. One was Mark Hansen, a wealthy nightclub owner who ran the Florentine Gardens, a popular Hollywood spot with burlesque shows. Beth had stayed at his house briefly in late 1946, sleeping in a guest room. Hansen was known as a ladies' man with a collection of photos of young women. Police searched his property and questioned him thoroughly. They found some photos of Beth, but no physical evidence linking him to the crime. He had an alibi and was eventually cleared, though he remained in the spotlight for a while. Another name that came up years later was Dr. George Hodel, a prominent Los Angeles physician who treated high society clients. In 1949, during an unrelated investigation into allegations involving his family, police secretly recorded conversations at his home. On one tape, Hodel made cryptic remarks that some interpreted as possible references to the case, like wondering if authorities could still prove something. His son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD detective, later wrote books arguing his father was responsible, citing surgical skill and other circumstantial points. Hodel moved abroad and died in 1999 without ever being charged. While the theory has passionate supporters, critics point out the lack of direct physical evidence or confirmed connection between Hodel and Beth. Then, there's Leslie Dillon, a bellhop and former mortuary assistant who reached out to police with detailed knowledge of crime scenes and sadistic behavior. He seemed overly interested in the case and was questioned intensely. Detectives like Hansen thought he might be involved because of his background and some of what he said. But Dillon provided a solid alibi, placing him in San Francisco around the time of the murder, and he was released. Some later theories revisited him when DNA discussions arose, but nothing conclusive emerged. Other leads pointed to Robert "Red" Manley, a married salesman who was one of the last people known to have driven Beth somewhere before she disappeared. He was questioned for days and polygraphed, but ultimately cleared. He passed away in 1986. The investigation was massive. Over 1,000 interviews, leads stretching to other cities like Chicago, Las Vegas, and back to Boston. The LAPD spent what was then a huge amount of money, equivalent to millions today. They examined every angle: jealous rivals, random violence, even wilder ideas involving Hollywood insiders or groups. But no arrests. The case gradually went cold, becoming one of those legends that refuses to fade. Why does it endure? Part of it is the contrast with Beth's own story. She was a hopeful young woman in a city full of dreamers. Post-war LA promised reinvention, bright lights, movie stars, new beginnings. But for many like Beth, it was also a place of struggle. Cheap rooms, fleeting relationships, the constant hustle to get noticed. She wasn't a major star or a wealthy socialite. She was an ordinary girl with extraordinary aspirations who fell through the cracks. Her death highlighted the darker side of that glamour, the vulnerability of young women chasing fame in a big, impersonal city. Media sensationalism played a huge role too. The Black Dahlia nickname turned a tragic human story into a mythic one. Books, films, and documentaries have kept it alive, each adding layers. Some theories suggest a jealous acquaintance, others a traveling stranger, or even connections to other unsolved cases from the era. In recent years, there's been talk of linking it to the Zodiac Killer or other patterns, but those remain speculative and unproven. On the evidence side, the LAPD has revisited the case with modern tools. In the 2000s and beyond, they looked at preserved items like hair, tissue, and a blanket found near the scene using advancing DNA techniques. Around 2020, there were reports of progress pointing toward a deceased person of interest from the original suspect list, someone whose DNA allegedly connected to an item near the body. It wasn't definitive proof of guilt, just proximity. Names like Dillon, Hodel, or even Dr. Walter Bailey, a surgeon who lived nearby and had personal troubles, get mentioned in discussions. But as of 2026, the LAPD hasn't made a final public resolution. The case remains officially open. Some experts, like retired journalists and researchers, favor Bailey because of his medical background, proximity to the dump site, and personal stressors at the time. Others stick with Hodel or Dillon. The truth is, without a smoking gun, clear DNA match, confession, or overlooked witness, debate continues. Old evidence degrades, witnesses pass away, and memories fade. That's the frustration of cold cases. Stepping back, what makes this story resonate isn't just the whodunit, it's the human element. Elizabeth Short was 22, full of life, flaws, and hopes. She had bad luck with family and love, but she kept moving forward. She wrote letters, made friends, laughed in bars, and dreamed of the silver screen. Her death didn't define her entirely. It was a horrifying end to a short, complicated life. Remembering her as more than the Black Dahlia feels important. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend who wanted to matter. The vacant lot where she was found is long since developed, but the neighborhood still carries a quiet echo of that morning. Betty Berzinger's discovery changed how people saw their city. It reminded everyone that evil can hide in plain sight, that not every story has a neat ending. As we wrap up, if there's one takeaway, it's this. Unsolved cases like this invite us to reflect on justice, memory, and the passage of time. Advances in forensics give hope, but some answers may stay buried. Beth's story reminds us to be kind to those chasing dreams in tough cities and to value the lives behind the headlines. What do you think happened? Do any suspects stand out to you? Or do you believe it was someone never even on the radar? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Respectfully, please. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like, subscribe for more historical true crime stories, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and take care out there.